Hello and welcome. In 1918, a community of farmers over in Kheda, Gujarat, found themselves pushed right to the absolute edge. Today, we're going to dive into the Kheda Satyagraha. Now, this is a truly pivotal moment in modern Indian history, and for those of you preparing for competitive exams, it's a critical case study for understanding how India's freedom struggle really evolved.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? How did farmers, who were facing starvation from drought and a deadly plague, manage to stand up to what was then the most powerful empire on earth? It's a story of incredible hardship, but also of just unbelievable resolve and a revolutionary new way of protesting that would change the fight for India's freedom forever.
So, to really get what the Satyagraha was all about, we first need to understand what was going on in the Kheda district itself. You know, the stage for this incredible conflict was set way before the actual showdown in 1918.
Kheda was a place of real contrasts. On the one hand, you had this super fertile land, perfect for cash crops like tobacco and cotton, and you had the Patidars, who were known for being amazing farmers. But despite all that, they were trapped in poverty. There was this devastating famine back in 1899, and the years that followed were filled with disease. It had completely wrecked the local economy. So this wasn't some sudden problem. It was a crisis that had been simmering for a long time.
And all this long-term suffering, well, in 1918, it just exploded. A whole bunch of new disasters all hit at once, pushing the people of Kheda right past their breaking point. It was setting the stage for a major confrontation.
Just try to put yourself in their shoes for a second. First, a terrible drought hits, so your crops fail. Then, a deadly plague epidemic starts sweeping through your village. And right in the middle of all this death and devastation, what does the British government do? It decides to conduct a new land survey, and you're not going to believe this, they announce a huge tax increase.
And just let that number sink in. 17,000 people in Kheda alone. This wasn't just some economic issue. This was a massive humanitarian disaster. People were dying. Their families were being torn apart. And on top of all that grief and fear, the government comes knocking, demanding more money.
And this, right here, this was the number at the heart of the injustice, a 23% tax hike. Slapping this on people during a plague and a drought, it was more than just a bad policy decision. To the farmers of Kheda, it felt like a death sentence, and it became the spark that was about to light a fire.
So you see, you have these two totally different realities just crashing into each other. The farmers were pointing out, and they were right, that according to the government's own rules, the Land Revenue Code, if your crop yield is less than a quarter of normal, your tax is supposed to be completely waived. That was their reality, total devastation. But the British officials, they just looked at their own rigid assessments and said, nope, our numbers say you had a good harvest, pay up. It was a complete and total disconnect.
So with the government just refusing to listen, the farmers had to look for help. And this is where our story pivots. Because two of the most important figures in the entire freedom struggle, Mahatma Gandhi and a very determined local lawyer named Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, step onto the scene to design a whole new kind of resistance.
And you know, what's interesting is that their first move wasn't a big protest. No, they did everything by the book. Gandhi was actually busy with the mill strike in Ahmedabad, so Sardar Patel took the lead here. He and his team went from village to village, not just listening, but carefully documenting everything, collecting proof, recording testimonies, building an airtight case. Then they filed a formal petition, using the government's own laws to argue their point. They really tried to play by the rules.
But the British authorities, they just rejected it, flat out. They dismissed all the detailed evidence and just stuck to their official story. And for the farmers and their leaders, that was it. That was the final straw. The path of petition was officially a dead end. A new path had to be created.
Okay, so the official channels are closed. Now what? This is when Gandhi arrives in Kheda and declares that the people will not bend. It was time to unleash a powerful new weapon, one that didn't need an army or any violence at all. It was time for Satyagraha.
So what is Satyagraha exactly? Well, it literally translates to truth force. It's about this deep, profound commitment to what is right, even when you're under immense pressure. In Kheda, the plan was simple, but unbelievably hard to pull off. Nobody would pay the tax. But, and this is absolutely crucial, they had to peacefully accept whatever punishment the government dished out, whether their land was taken, their cattle were seized, or they were thrown in jail.
Think about what that pledge really means. The level of discipline it required from every single person is just extraordinary. You see, the fight wasn't against the British officials as people. It was a fight for the truth. Their strength didn't come from physical power. It came from their moral conviction. It was a strategy designed to show everyone how unjust the system really was. And of course, the empire did strike back. And it struck back hard. The government did exactly what you'd expect. People were arrested and thrown in jail. Their land, their animals, everything they owned was taken away. Intimidation tactics were everywhere. This was the real test of Satyagraha. Could you endure all this suffering without fighting back? Could you meet state-sponsored violence with nothing but peaceful defiance?
Well, for months, the farmers held their ground. They didn't break. Their peaceful resilience created this immense political and moral pressure. The government's strategy of just using brute force was failing. And eventually, the same government that had refused to even listen to a petition was forced to come to the negotiating table.
And the agreement they reached was, make no mistake, a huge victory for the farmers. The government gave in on all the major points. Taxes would only be collected from those who could actually afford it. Everyone else got a waiver for 2 full years. That unjust 23% hike? It was reduced. And, crucially, all the land and property that had been confiscated was returned.
So why is this one event so important? Why do we still study it today, especially for exams like the UPSC? Well, first, it puts Sardar Patel on the map as a major national leader, a brilliant organizer. Second, it really woke up India's farmers politically, showing them the power they had when they stood together. And third, after the success at Champaran Kheda proved, on a large scale, that Satyagraha wasn't just some nice philosophy, it was a powerful, practical political weapon that could actually work against the British Raj.
Ultimately, the story of Kheda leaves us with this powerful question. It shows us that when ordinary people are united for a cause they believe in, their simple refusal to cooperate can challenge even the most powerful systems in the world. It's a lesson that is just as relevant today as it was all the way back in 1918. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.